It should have been a routine exit, but the car was in the wrong bay. The valet was missing, and the guard noticed something no one else did, a slight bulge in the rear carpet, and a smell that didn't belong in a freshly detailed Bentley. So he reached under the seat and pulled out something no one was supposed to see, a deed, stamped with the Queen's cipher, forged, and sealed for a property Camilla was never meant to own. What happened next? A guard held his ground. William drew the line. And Camilla found herself facing the one word more powerful than her title, evidence. Now, before we show you what Princess Anne said that stopped everything cold, drop a comment telling us where you're watching from. Tap subscribe with the bell icon turned on and stay right here, because this time they caught her. The rain fell in soft pulses, not heavy, just enough to blur the stones. Sergeant Elias Rourke stood beneath the overhang overlooking Windsor's South Service quadrant with his clipboard tucked under one arm. Mid-shift. Nothing scheduled. This wasn't where processions arrived. This was where laundry vans reversed and food crates got logged. 9 years walking this courtyard, long enough to know when something didn't fit. Gate 3 buzzed softly. He turned just slightly. The black Bentley rolled past the threshold without announcement. No escort, no log ping, no radio call from the outer checkpoint. Crown Standard 659, her car. It glided across the wet stones, slow and steady, tyres hissing faintly. Instead of veering toward the royal entrance where all private arrivals were funneled, it steered right. Toward Bay 7. Bay 7 had been flagged for maintenance the week prior. CCTV relay down, tile work unfinished. The only blind spot in the entire perimeter. And this wasn't a van. This was Queen Camilla's personal vehicle, backing gently into a service bay reserved for logistics. No valet appeared. No advance call. The Bentley came to a stop. Engine stayed on for 30 seconds before shutting off in a quiet sigh. Then the passenger door opened. Queen Camilla stepped out, coat cinched high, one gloved hand smoothing rain from her sleeve. She glanced once, directly at Elias. No nod, no recognition. Just a second's pause. Then she turned and walked across the courtyard, heels clicking. She wasn't carrying anything. No purse, no document pouch, nothing. Behind her, the chauffeur opened the boot, peered inside, didn't unload anything. Elias didn't move. Just stood there, shoulders square, watching her disappear into the conservatory wing. The door closed behind her without fanfare. The courtyard went silent except for the rain tapping limestone. No staff, no aides, nothing. He lowered his gaze to the clipboard and flipped the page. Made 3 notes. Wrong gate, wrong bay, no valet presence. Then he lifted his comm mic. Post 2. Confirm Crown Standard routing for consort arrival. Bentley, black, 659, gate 3, ingress no log, requesting cross-check. The reply didn't come immediately, and that silence was louder than the rain. Dash, dash, dash. 10 minutes passed, then 15. The Bentley sat in Bay 7, bonnet gleaming beneath silver daylight. The mist hadn't lifted. It had thickened, crawling into corners and softening the angles of stone. Elias remained in position, unmoving. But his mind had already left the archway. Something was wrong. He stepped off the covered walk and crossed the courtyard at a measured pace. Not fast enough to draw attention, not slow enough to seem idle. As he approached, the first thing he noticed was the smell. Warm leather, faint lavender, and something underneath. Old paper, the kind that holds scent in the fibres. It wasn't coming from the boot. He stopped by the driver's side rear door. The window was cracked open an inch. Strange, given the rain. His eyes flicked to the tyres. Clean. Not recently driven over gravel, but the rear left had mud splashed up the inside wall. Side path, maybe. Off route. Elias looked around. Courtyard empty. He opened the rear door slowly. The smell intensified. Lavender oil clung to the air, but beneath it, paper. Treated parchment. Not new. He leaned in. The seat was spotless. Quilted leather, cream stitch, floor mat freshly brushed. But just below the seat, Where the frame met the carpet, there was a wrinkle, barely noticeable, a half-inch fold in the edge of the floor covering. Elias crouched, slid one gloved hand under the seat. His fingers met resistance, something flat, smooth, bound. He grasped the edge and slowly drew it out. A rolled leather folder emerged, worn at the corners, tied with ribbon. The ceremonial kind. The kind used on archived land agreements. The kind last seen under sealed glass. He turned it over. To be sealed, 2021, was handwritten in neat black script along the spine. His brows drew together. He unfastened the ribbon carefully and unrolled the folder halfway. There it was. Transfer of partial holdings, Balmoral Lodge, North Lawn Parcel. The deed was official in every visible way. Royal crest in the header, bordered seal at the bottom, the Queen's cipher in red wax. But something was wrong. The line spacing between the identifiers and the cipher was off, slightly, but enough. Elias had seen original deeds in person. The cipher sat too high, and the signature line beneath it, unsigned, not blank, unsigned. It was formatted for a sovereign signature, but the pen never touched it. At the bottom right, just beneath the wax, was the final proof. The Queen's seal, except it wasn't. The crown above the EIIR emblem was too rounded. The ornamental cross at its peak had no split. A replica, close enough to fool a clerk, not a Coldstream Guard. Elias had stood 3 feet from the Queen's actual seal twice in his career. Once during the lying in state, when he'd guarded the catafalque through the night. Once during an archive tour, Princess Anne had led for senior guards, teaching them what to protect and what to recognise. She'd held up the sovereign seal press and pointed to the cross. It splits at the apex, she'd said. Always. My father designed it that way. Said it reminded him nothing's ever perfectly whole, and this one didn't split, and there was something else. He tilted the parchment toward the light. The ink along the border, the decorative flourish that framed the text, was too uniform, too clean. Real documents from 2021 would have slight bleed, where the ink settled into handmade paper. This had none. It was digital, printed, then aged. Someone had gone to considerable effort, but they'd missed the details that mattered. Elias stared at it for a long moment. Then he slowly re-rolled the folder, tied the ribbon, and slid it back beneath the seat, exactly as he'd found it. Shut the door, stood upright. The Bentley was still warm. The leather had seat imprints, fresh ones. He lifted his radio. Command Post Rourke, confirm status of Balmoral North Lawn deed, logged 2021 sovereign signature. Does archive show release of that parcel? A pause. Then, negative. Parcel marked retained. No signature. No authorization. Deed remains unissued. Elias looked back at the car. Rain sliding down the glass like slow tears. He exhaled once. Then we've got a forged deed. Pause. And it's sitting under her back seat. Dash, dash, dash. Elias didn't move at first. Let the Bentley sit. Quiet. Still. The mist drifted lazily around its wheel wells. He stepped slowly around the rear, boots quiet on wet tile. The leather folder was still beneath the seat. Untouched. Unlogged. Forged. He reached into his belt pouch and removed a small red tag, the kind rarely used unless a vehicle was being flagged for contamination or controlled inspection. Temporary seal marker, Ordnance 9. He peeled the backing and applied it discreetly to the inside of the rear left tyre, just above the axle line, out of view unless you knew where to look. Then he stood and waited. The chauffeur reappeared from the conservatory wing, head bowed against the mist. His gait was unhurried, almost bored, until he spotted Elias standing near the Bentley's rear door. He slowed. Elias stepped forward, intercepting him just as he reached for the handle. This vehicle is now under hold. The driver blinked. Sorry, Sergeant. Crown Security Ordinance 9. Legacy material suspected in unauthorized transit. This vehicle is not to be entered, started or moved. I wasn't told of any hold. You wouldn't have been. The chauffeur shifted. Well, I have orders to return Her Majesty to Clarence House by 1600. You won't be returning anything until inspection is complete. The driver hesitated, weighing something. Then he reached toward the door again. Elias raised a single hand, not sharply, not threateningly, just enough. Call it in, and do not touch the ignition. Something in the firmness settled the air. The chauffeur's hand dropped. Elias stepped back, keyed his comm. Watch Commander. Post Rourke. Initiating Level 2 asset hold on Crown Standard 659. Suspected forged sovereign document in rear cabin. Request custodial authority dispatch. Short pause. Then, received. Stand by for verification. Do not permit movement. Understood. Vehicle secured. One witness present. Seal applied. The channel clicked off. A second guard approached from the inner corridor. No words, just a nod. Elias gestured him to post by the boot. The guard took position without question. Silent support. The formation was complete. The mist was thinning, but the weight in the courtyard had grown heavier. The Bentley sat motionless, hemmed in by men who weren't moving. The clock chimed once. Elias didn't glance at it. His eyes remained on the car. Dash, dash, dash. The Range Rover arrived just before the hour turned. No siren, no escort, just the low hum of its engine as it rolled into the courtyard. Headlights cut briefly through the mist before shutting off. Prince William stepped out alone. No aide, no folder, just a windbreaker, and his jaw set like he hadn't slept well. Elias met him halfway. Sir? William didn't stop walking. What do we have? Rear passenger seat, beneath the floor panel, rolled leather folder, bound in 2021, labelled to be sealed. Deed for Balmoral North Lawn parcel. William's brow furrowed. She never signed that one. No, sir. And this one's unsigned. But the cipher's stamped, and it's wrong. They reached the vehicle. Elias opened the rear door, then retrieved the folder with both hands. He offered William a fresh pair of inspection gloves from his belt pouch. William took them, slipped them on, and accepted the leather roll. He unfastened the ribbons slowly, laid the contents across the Bentley's roof. The parchment unfolded with a dry whisper. Ink still crisp. No smudging. As if it had been printed days ago, not years. William leaned in. His eyes moved down the document line by line. Transfer of partial holdings, Balmoral Lodge, North Lawn parcel. His voice was low, almost to himself. Royal residential zoning, private inheritance structure, conditions of occupancy. He stopped, looked up. This is impossible. She said she would never split Balmoral without a full succession agreement. Confirmed with archives, Elias said. Parcel remained under the sovereign's private lock. No sign-out, no memo. No royal signature. William scanned the bottom again. The Queen's cipher was there, but the wax seal looked too round. The curve of the R was distorted, placement too close to the body text. The flourish is wrong, William murmured. It doesn't dip. Hers always dipped. Elias nodded once. Printer's error, but deliberate. Spacing's off. Ink's fresh. Ribbon creased at the fold, footed. Recent handling. William pulled his phone from his coat and dialed. Put it on speaker. Anne, I need you to pull the 2021 Balmoral Deed Archive. Specifically, North Lawn parcel. Check if the unissued deed was ever removed from the sovereign vault. A pause. Then Anne's voice. Sharp, immediate. It was checked 2 weeks ago. Logged present. Why? Because I'm holding what looks like a copy. And it's been under Camilla's seat. Silence on the other end. Not hesitation. Calculation. I'm 10 minutes out. Don't let that vehicle move. The line went dead. William lowered the phone and looked at Elias. 2 weeks ago, right after the Balmoral Estate Review meeting. The one about long-term land stewardship, Elias asked. The one where Camila suggested the North Lawn parcel could be better utilised if separated from the main estate, William said quietly. My grandmother shut it down in under 30 seconds, said Balmoral stays whole or it means nothing. He looked back at the deed. 2 weeks later, someone prints a version where it's already split. Elias said nothing, but his jaw tightened slightly. William didn't speak. He re-rolled the parchment slowly, retied it the way archivists were trained to do. She wasn't supposed to own any of this. That was the line. No one outside the bloodline gets title land at Balmoral. He paused, looked across the mist toward the conservatory doors. She'll be back out soon. Elias waited. William looked at him directly. You believe it was placed deliberately? I believe it was hidden. William didn't blink. He tapped the rolled folder once against his palm. Shall I detain the vehicle? Elias asked. William hesitated for half a beat. Then, detain the vehicle. And the driver. Elias didn't nod, and he just turned and walked back to the Bentley. Dash, dash, dash. The glass door to the conservatory clicked open. Queen Camilla emerged with a rustle of her coat and the quick stride of someone expecting the car to be warm and the door already open. But as she reached the first line of cobblestones, her pace faltered. There were 3 of them now. Prince William stood to her left, arms folded. Sergeant Elias Rourke stood just ahead of the Bentley, directly blocking the rear door. Another guard had taken position near the boot, gaze level, unmoving. The car hadn't shifted. The driver was nowhere in sight. Camilla's expression cooled by degrees. What is the meaning of this? Her voice rang across the courtyard, cutting through the air like the snap of a silk glove. William didn't raise his voice. Would you like to explain why a sealed deed to Balmoral's private north lawn was found beneath your rear seat? She blinked, just once. Then her gaze shifted to Elias, who remained silent. That's a mistake. It was likely placed there for transport, part of a review I requested. Preservation, nothing more. It's a forged document, William said. Camilla's jaw set. A clerical inconsistency, perhaps. The cipher could have been applied in error. Archival staff aren't always precise. Elias finally spoke. Ma'am, the spacing of the header, the ink density and the lack of authentication marks indicate this was not misfiled. The wax cipher is artificial. The document bears no registered signature. Her eyes flared. You're a guard, not an archivist. I'm a guard who has been trained to recognize tampered royal documentation and who is required by Crown custodial statute to act upon unauthorized transfers. She took a step forward, voice rising. And are you also trained to interrogate the Queen Consort in a service courtyard like a criminal? I haven't asked a question, ma'am. I have simply secured a vehicle containing sealed legacy property that was meant never to leave archival control. Camilla turned sharply to William. You're going to stand there and let this play out? Publicly? Over a piece of paper? It's not a piece of paper, William replied. It's a deed to a parcel my grandmother explicitly declined to assign. A parcel that just happened to be hidden under your seat. I didn't hide anything. Then you won't mind us verifying chain of custody. Her nostrils flared. You're blowing this out of proportion. And you're pretending the seal wasn't faked. Staff don't forge ciphers. Staff don't fold up royal deeds and wedge them into car upholstery. That folder wasn't being preserved. It was being concealed. It was being prepared, Camilla said, voice dropping into something colder, for a conversation. A private conversation about practical estate planning that your grandmother refused to have. William's eyes narrowed. What conversation? She hesitated. Just for a second. There are interested parties. Conservationists. People who understand that parcels like North Lawn could serve the public interest better than sitting locked behind estate walls. The document was meant as a framework, a proposal. A proposal, William repeated slowly, using a forged royal seal. A template, she corrected, to demonstrate feasibility. To demonstrate that you already had the authority to transfer it, William said. That's what this was. You were going to present this to someone, likely someone with money, and tell them the land was available, that the Queen had already authorized the split before she died. Camilla's face went very still. That's exactly what this is, William cut in. And the only reason you got caught is because you didn't expect a guard to know what her actual seal looked like. Elias remained silent, but his eyes hadn't left her face. Camilla turned again to Elias, voice low and bitter now. "You don't get to lecture me on the crown." "No, ma'am," he replied quietly. "I just get to hold the door shut when someone tries to drive a sealed file off palace grounds." A breath caught in the air. Behind the archive wing windows, a few staff members had paused. No one was speaking, but they were watching. Then more appeared. A valet by the conservatory door, 2 clerks near the upper corridor, a groundskeeper who'd stopped mid-task near the stone wall. None of them moved closer. None of them spoke. They just stopped and watched. It wasn't gossip. Not yet, but it was something else. Witnessing. The kind of silent institutional memory that gets passed down in glances and careful phrasings. The kind that doesn't need a headline, because everyone who needs to know will know by dinner. One of the older archive assistants, a woman who'd worked under the Queen's private secretary for 30 years, stood at the second-floor window with her hand pressed flat against the glass. She didn't look away, didn't blink. She'd know by now what was in that folder, and she'd know what it meant that it was under the Queen Consort's seat instead of behind locked glass where it belonged. Camilla looked from Elias to William, then back to the Bentley, its roof slick with rain, its tyres still tagged. Her fingers curled slightly, but she said nothing. Dash, dash, dash. The side gate opened without warning. Princess Anne didn't wait for her name to be called. She stepped into the courtyard wearing her black field coat, gloves tucked in one hand, clipboard beneath her arm. She moved like someone who'd been briefed mid-stride and hadn't broken pace since. Her boots hit the stone in clean, deliberate rhythms. Camilla straightened reflexively. Anne didn't look at her. She walked directly to William, accepted the rolled folder he held out, and unfastened the ribbon without a word. The parchment unfurled across her palm with the slow weight of something both familiar and deeply unwelcome. Her eyes scanned it in silence. Once, twice. Then she pulled a small leather notebook from her coat pocket, the kind she always carried, filled with handwritten logs. She flipped to a page marked with a red tab and read something there. Her jaw tightened. She looked up at Camilla. June 14th, Estate Stewardship Committee. You proposed separating North Lawn for public-private partnership development. My mother's response, and I'm reading directly from my notes, was, Balmoral is not a portfolio. It is not an asset to be optimized. It stays whole, or we've failed to understand what holding it meant. Anne closed the notebook with a soft snap. She didn't just decline your proposal. She closed the door, and she asked me specifically to ensure no paperwork was ever generated that could be misinterpreted as authorization. Anne held up the forged deed. This is exactly what she was afraid of. Camilla's voice came quieter now. She wasn't thinking long-term. The estate needs to stay exactly as she left it, Anne cut in. That was her final instruction. Not a suggestion, an instruction. She refastened the ribbon and handed it back to William, then turned to Elias. When did you find this? 1406, ma'am. Rear passenger compartment, under-seat storage. And the vehicle's been here since? Since 1340. No movement, no access, except initial discovery and Prince William's inspection. Anne nodded slowly. Her eyes moved to Camilla. She knew this was off limits. Her voice wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. It was the tone of doors closing behind you. Camilla stepped forward, attempting poise. Anne! But Anne's gaze was already on the car. You weren't given that parcel for a reason, because she knew what you'd do with it. I was safeguarding. No! You were packaging. Anne's voice didn't rise. And I've seen enough of that these past 2 years. Camilla's jaw worked. You're reading malice where there's only order. We've let too much rot. The estates need rational management. That's not your job. And it certainly wasn't your right. A beat of silence. Camilla took another breath. The deed was never finalized. I know that. It was a draft, an old one. I simply wanted to ensure it didn't disappear in the shuffle. Disappear into your glove compartment, William said quietly. Camilla turned toward him, expression flaring. I never intended to misuse it. Anne finally turned to face her fully. But you did intend to use it. The sentence landed like a slap in the rain. Elias remained at post, unmoving, eyes steady, and didn't hesitate. Sergeant, mark this vehicle as evidence. Log rear compartment as compromised. Record chain of custody starting now. Elias nodded once. Already logged, ma'am. Anne gave him a single glance of quiet approval before turning back to Camilla. The Queen Consort's voice dropped an octave, no longer commanding, but cutting. You're treating me like a criminal over a paper. No, Anne said. We're treating her memory like it still matters. Camilla's mouth opened, then closed. Nothing she said would change the seal. Nothing would erase the position she'd just been caught standing in. She looked at the guards, the tags on the car doors, the silent staff at the edge of the courtyard. Even the mist seemed to be waiting. Anne stepped forward, stopping just shy of her. You were invited into this family, but you weren't invited to rewrite it. Camilla didn't answer. For once, even her silence didn't feel like control. Dash, dash, dash. Elias moved with unhurried precision. One by one, he applied the evidence tags, first to the driver's door, then the rear, then the trunk. Each strip sealed across the edges with an embedded code. It wasn't spectacle, it was protocol, and it was being executed with the same quiet dignity he used to guard the sovereign's casket the night before the state funeral. The last tag settled across the Bentley's front badge, bridging the bonnet seam. Camilla watched from 5 paces away, said nothing. When her chauffeur re-emerged from the conservatory corridor, confusion already on his face, Elias raised one hand in silent instruction. Driver is to be escorted for questioning. The secondary guard stepped forward and gestured the man aside. No confrontation, no raised voice, just a redirection. The chauffeur went quietly, though he looked once nervously at Camilla. She gave no signal. William remained still, hands folded behind his back, coat dampened by mist. Anne stood with her arms crossed, watching it all like a surgeon overseeing the end of a long, avoidable surgery. Camilla finally broke the silence. This will blow over in a week. William didn't respond at first. Then, not this time. She turned slightly toward him. It's a mistake, a paperwork error. Even if the seal is wrong, it wasn't meant for anything, But leverage, Anne cut in. Camilla's mouth tightened. Anne didn't raise her tone. You knew that parcel was sealed for succession. She told you. You asked. She declined. It ended there. She would have changed her mind. No, William said quietly. She never changed her mind about Balmoral. Camilla looked around again, calculation in her eyes, but no allies. The guards were neutral. The staff watching through upper corridor windows didn't blink. Anne and William stood unshaken. Then Elias spoke again, tone respectful but immovable. Ma'am, until verification is complete and the forged document is documented by Crown Marshal Review, I must ask that you not approach the vehicle again. Camilla turned her full gaze on him. You're giving orders to the Queen Consort? No, ma'am. I'm giving boundaries to an active security perimeter. Her expression flickered. Just for a moment. Not fear. The realization that she could do nothing. No title, no voice, no gesture would untag the vehicle now. She stepped back. One deliberate pace. Elias didn't thank her. He simply remained in position. The courtyard went still. Not quiet. Still. As if the air had crystallized around the Bentley, and no one wanted to be the one to break it. Camilla folded her arms, coat pressed tightly across her chest. She glanced once more at Anne. I hope this is worth the precedent you're setting. Anne didn't move. The only precedent being set is that we still honour what she asked. Camilla said nothing. The mist curled around the car. The seals fluttered slightly. No one moved. Dash, dash, dash. By the time the sun dipped behind the western flank of Windsor, the courtyard had emptied. The Bentley remained where it was, boxed in by velvet stanchions, sealed at every door, its royal emblem dim beneath the courtyard lamps. 2 Crown Marshal officers stood nearby now, quiet, unhurried, clipboard and scanner in hand. The official inventory would take hours, but the real containment had already happened. Inside the logistics wing, Elias stood at the service counter, entering the final chain of custody log into the record system. His fingers moved with the same steadiness that had marked every step of the day. At the top of the log, Asset Rolled Deed, Balmoral Lodge, North Lawn. Status Forged. Recovery Site. Underseat Storage, Crown Standard 659. Recovery Time 1406. Custodian Rourke, E. SAS Royal Guard, Coldstream. He signed his name beneath it. Nothing more. Behind him, footsteps echoed. Clean, steady, unhurried. He didn't need to turn. Prince William appeared at his shoulder, coat now draped over one arm. His posture was looser than before, but his eyes held the same weight. "You made the right call." Elias didn't look up from the logbook. "Didn't feel like a choice, sir. That's why it mattered." Elias finally turned toward him. "She left us instructions." William nodded slowly, and she left them knowing not everyone would follow them. There was a pause, heavier silence, not uncomfortable, but final. Then William added, softer, "She told me once that Balmoral was her compass. That if anyone ever tried to split it, it meant they didn't understand the point." Elias said nothing. He didn't need to. William looked back through the glass pane toward the sealed vehicle beyond. "The seal didn't stop her." "But you did." Elias offered a quiet nod, then closed the ledger with a deliberate motion. The binding snapped gently shut. They walked together down the corridor, just the two of them, toward the last post-rotation of the evening. Outside, the air had cooled to a thin, almost transparent chill. The fog was thinner now, but still hung along the lower stones, curling around the tyres of the Bentley like silk caught in a doorframe. It hadn't moved. It wouldn't. The stanchions stood like sentries, the tags reflected in the yellow light. And in the stillness that had settled over the palace grounds, the only sound was the click of Elias's boots as he crossed the final stretch of cobblestone. He paused at the edge of the stanchion. One last glance at the car, at the sealed document within, at what someone had tried to take, and what had stayed behind instead. Then he turned away, and the fog swallowed the sound of his steps. Would you have checked beneath the rear seat, or walked away? Should forged royal documents ever be handled privately, or always exposed? And if you were the guard, would you have detained the Queen Consort's vehicle? If you believe integrity still matters, tap that like button right now. Make sure you're subscribed with the bell icon turned on. We upload every single day. And don't forget to share this video with someone who still believes the Queen's word should never be forged. Our other Royal Guard stories are already on screen. Go ahead and watch them next, and we'll see you tomorrow, same time, right here.